This is the Specialized Turbo X. I've been excited to try this thing out for quite a while, primarily because it has suspension, and when you're traveling at higher speeds, which this bike is definitely capable of, going over a long distance, maybe you're commuting with it, for me, it's just nice to have a little bit of cushion, and that's actually complemented by these 700 by 47C hybrid wheels. You can see they're a little bit wider there than the traditional road bike, and you definitely feel it. They're a little bit softer, and they've got this cool black belt puncture protection thing built in so that hopefully they shouldn't get flats as easily, because this is a 49.5 pound bike. It does come in 4 sizes. They're small, medium, which is what I have here, and large and extra large. So you can dial in the fit and everything. It's a high step, sort of a diamond frame for all the different models. But in general, the weight is really well distributed. You can see the battery pack right there, kind of in that down tube. And we've got the motor in the back. That's a Go Swiss drive from Ortlinghaus. Really cool motor. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. I want to finish up by just saying that, the suspension here, RockShox Paragon, it's an air fork, so it's extra light. You kind of got this cap here. You can adjust the air pressure in there if you want to. There it is. And that's not the only thing. You can actually do remote lockout. So if you are someone who finds like a nice smooth stretch of tarmac, just like we're here and near LA, I'm kind of in the riverbed. It's real smooth. You don't need the suspension necessarily. You can lock it out and you'll reduce the bobbing, and you'll get even more efficiency and stiffness, which is what this bike is, and what Specialized is really known for with their road bikes. So it's an all aluminum frame, and it's kind of tested to their downhill spec. I think it's like M4 aluminum alloy. Really rigid, tough, and sturdy, and they've kind of done this cutaway battery that it blends in so nicely. But I don't feel like this frame is flexy. It hasn't lost any of its strength, which is great. It's a good feel on this bike. And now maybe I'll jump back to the motor. So as I was saying, it's really unique. This thing is actually 200 watt nominal, which might surprise people a little. It's like 200 watt motor. What's that all about? Well, it peaks at 750 watts. So it's kind of deceiving. It's a little bit confusing at first because you hop on it and it zips, especially in turbo mode. But it's super, super quiet. It's like one of the quietest motors that I've tried, being gearless. There's really no moving parts in there, and they've designed it so that there's an uneven number of magnets in there, so that you don't get kind of that, a little bit of a shifting feeling as the magnets pass the stator. It's really fluid, really nice. And the turbo, the standard turbo, is kind of equivalent to the Turbo X here in the sense that it also has a 200 to 750 watt motor, whereas the Turbo S, that's the $6,000 model, it's a little bit higher performance. It's 250 to 900, so it's a little bit zippier, a little bit faster, and you're kind of paying a premium. This bike is $4,000, which to me is decent. I mean, I know a lot of people, it's like, oh, I want a cheap electric bike and stuff, but I mean, you get what you pay for in a lot of ways. And with Specialized, you're getting an excellent warranty, you're getting great distribution, good support. These guys have been making bikes, like normal bikes, for a long time. They're kind of a leader in the United States, and you get just really clean, integrated, just all the components, like the lights, the display. It's very purpose-built. The fact that it has the water bottle mounting points on the battery. You've got a rack and fender kit that you can add on to this thing. I mean, it's just, and even the color, okay? So we've got this like nice satin black, okay? It's kind of almost like a matte black, and it matches the fork, okay? That's beautiful. Like, that rarely happens. That was definitely like planned. They did that on purpose. 50 millimeters of travel on this one, by the way. And they've got things like these reflective graphics. You can see it says Specialized on the down tube. It's safe, but it's also awesome. Like, this bike just looks really, really cool. And to me, I mean, that kind of matters. Like, if you're going to buy something, you ride in it every day, it's nice to have it feel kind of cool, and that's worth a little bit more money. And you're getting great performance. You're getting excellent battery with the Samsung cells, and of course the motor, all of this 2-year warranty on all the electronics and stuff. So that is really cool. And of course, if you're going fast, you need to be able to stop. So we've got these nice Formula C1 hydraulic disc brakes, 180 millimeter rotors, front and rear. There is a quick disconnect for the motor right here, as you can see. There isn't a quick release for the rear wheel, but it is a through axle, which is kind of nice. And that is going to keep it stiffer. It's going to help you kind of align the disc there a little bit, and it's going to allow this energy to be transferred from the motor to the wheel more efficiently than if you had like a skewer and maybe it was kind of rubbing and twisting. They're still fine and everything, but for going at higher speeds, it's an upgrade, you know, and you get a little bit better performance. And I think it even says here 10 to 15 Newton meter for the torque rating on this. It's cool, you know, it's all integrated and you've got some good feedback sort of tips along the way. On the front, you do have a quick release, which is nice. So if you're taking this in your car or something, you're going to be able to, you know, make it a little bit more compact. And of course, if you're hanging it on the rear rack type of thing that I always talk about, like on a bus or whatever, it's just going to be that much easier to do. One of the cons here in my mind, it's like if you took the battery off and you just wanted to ride it like a bicycle, you've got a heavier motor, and then your lights and stuff wouldn't necessarily work because they kind of run off the battery. I don't know how many people are actually going to do that, but just something that's kind of on my mind. The battery kind of conceals this wire. You can see it's running from up here, heading over here to the display panel. So this is kind of the electronics, whereas the shifters and they're all run like right down through the down tube. So the wires are pretty good. This one's a little bit more exposed, and I don't know, maybe they did that for troubleshooting. It does have kind of a self-diagnostic system, which is nice. Got these decent pedals. They're just sort of aluminum alloy platform. Got this sort of scissoring kickstand, which seems awesome. At first you're like, oh cool, you know, like look, you can kind of turn the front wheel, you can take the wheel off easily, the bike kind of stands itself up. But I found that if you're not on concrete with that, it can actually tip a little bit more easily. Like if you're in dirt or something, they're kind of sharp and they just sort of poke into the ground. So be careful with that, you wouldn't want it to tip. The grips are awesome, like ergonomic. They've got one locker here on the inside, so that keeps them straight. And you know, body geometry, same with the saddle, but it's real active, it's kind of narrow, it's going to feel good when you're riding, and a little bit of a kind of adjustability. It's a fairly flat bar, and really, I mean, this is kind of in between forward and forward aggressive, right? Like, it's still, in my opinion, kind of an urban bike, but it's a little bit more comfortable again than some of the other turbos that are like a little bit more pure road. So you kind of keep that in mind. Got the Presta valves on here, and yeah, I think maybe it'd be cool to take the battery off real quick in a second, but I want to talk about the gears. We've got SRAM X7, great component set, 10 speeds, so you can see the different sprockets right there. We've got a nice, I think 48 tooth front chain ring, and it's got this built-in aluminum bash guard, again matching. You can kind of see through the spindle right here, and then there's even, it's sort of like a chain guide on top, and that might help it from sort of bouncing off the chain. You might not drop as easily because it kind of squeezes it from the side and protects it from the top. So very cool. Again, just really, maybe even kind of molded it to fit right there against the down tube. So now I'll show you how the battery actually comes off. Got these keys right here. It comes with a couple of these. Pop it in like that, twist it, and then lift. There we go. Okay, I'm trying to do this one-handed. So there's the battery. That's what it looks like from the bottom. Talks about all the ratings: 36 volt, 13 amp hours. And yeah, you know, it's there's the charging port where it kind of connects to the frame, and that's where you'd actually charge it if you were charging it off the bike. And I'm going to do a kind of a quick overview now, you know, charging with the bike, and talk a little bit more about the battery. So this is the standard charger that comes with the turbo, and it's pretty big. I mean, it's, you know, this is an aluminum casing on it, and it's fairly heavy. It's about 4.5 pounds. It's a fast charger. It's 4 amps, which means that it can top the battery off in about, you know, 4.5 hours, which is, it kind of sounds standard, but you know, this is a little bit of a larger battery, 36 volts, 13 amp hours. So, you know, you're getting good capacity. There's 50 cells in there. They're made by Samsung. They're lithium ion, so really good stuff. It can really make this, transform it into a commuter. But one of the things that's kind of a bummer about commuting is the weight of this charger, because it's just, you know, it's pretty big, and if that was in a backpack, I just don't think it would feel great. So Specialized has, they have sort of addressed that. They have this, it's sort of their travel charger is what they call it. It's 1.6 amp, and it only weighs like 1.3 pounds, right? So it's, a lot smaller, more traditional, but this is gonna take like 7 hours to fully charge the bike. So, there's some trade-offs, and it's about 120 bucks if you want to buy this. The bike comes with this more powerful, higher quality charger, so worth keeping in mind. I love that they use the EnergyBus standard. You kind of see that. It's actually magnetic. So there's this little magnetic kind of a cover, and you can actually stick that to the frame right there so you won't lose it. And then you can go ahead and hook this up, and it sort of automatically switches around. It repels in one direction, and then it finally finds its way in. There we go. And when you're charging, one of the things I noticed is that, the lights kind of come on like this, and they seem to stay on. I haven't figured out how to turn them off, and, in some ways that's annoying. It's fully charged now, so the lights finally went off, but you'll notice that they did come on for a minute there, and for hours earlier, it just, it's lit up. It's like lighting up the whole room, and so it's kind of like, it might be an area of opportunity, but overall, feels like they've really addressed the charging thing very well. So if you did feel like you needed a second battery pack, you're looking at $800 for one of those. So it's pretty expensive just because it is so custom. The cells are actually packed by Simplo. They're the guys that do batteries for Apple devices. So just premium, all around, good stuff. It should last for a long time. The warranty on the battery, as well as the motor and the suspension fork, it's 2 years, or 300 complete charge cycles. And when they say complete, they mean like the whole thing. So, at first that kind of sounds like, 300, but I think it's actually pretty good. 2 years is solid there, and on the frame you get lifetime warranty. So, pretty good stuff. And I love that the battery, of course, does power the lights. And it has an automatic cutoff, so it stops with 4% left at the top, and it stops itself at 4% at the bottom. So it never completely charges or completely discharges, and that helps to protect the cells. And it also means that you're gonna have some juice left over for the lights. And even if you somehow got this all the way down, the gearless direct drive hub motor kind of acts as a dynamo. So as you're riding, it's giving it, it doesn't take much energy to light up these LEDs. It gives you enough energy that you're always going to have energy in there for the lights, which is just phenomenal. And when you turn it on, I'm gonna go ahead and unplug it from the charger. You just press this for, here, we'll put the lid on. Make sure I got it in the right direction. There we go. Press this button for a couple seconds, and you'll see these lights. It's checking. Okay, so that's a self-diagnostic. And if you see one of those lights flash a couple times, that means that something's not right. So it's like, okay, motor, check. Battery, check. And then it's going up here, display panel, check. And based on the flashing, you can tell if there's a problem, and that's how Specialized can actually diagnose it if you're going into a dealer or something. So now we're all charged up, and there's the super bright lights, front and rear. And in fact, this is a Supernova, and it's like metal, and it's just, it's really bright. Really does a good job, and it just so clean. It integrates. It's not going to rattle or, come out of adjustment. You can kind of use an Allen wrench there to aim it just right. See over there, we're really lighting up the room, and it's like daytime right here. So did a really good job of that. The one complaint with the rear light, however, is that because it's so integrated into this like body geometry Targa saddle, it's sort of wired into the seat tube right there. Okay, so that means if you wanted to replace this with like a Thudbuster or something like that, body float, you're gonna have to do some drilling and some cable management and stuff to actually physically, change that. And you can see there's the kind of the wire underneath. Another thing to call out here is, like in the display when you go left and right, there's odometer, and I've gone about 16 miles. If I go to the right, it has trip distance. It says 0. That only resets when you charge the battery. And since I just charged it and just unplugged it, it's like, okay, back to 0 with your trip distance. I really like the display. It is backlit, and it's just real minimal. It blends in nicely. It's solid. It's like metal. That little joystick thing is real reachable when you're riding like this. It's no problem at all just to kind of, you know, manipulate it a little bit. But frankly, I find I just leave it in turbo or eco mode, and that's kind of it. There's not a whole lot else to do. The downside is you'll notice that this is actually like bolted to the Formula C1 like brake lever. Okay, this is a very custom piece of hardware. It's you know, that's what keeps it small and sturdy, but that also means that you just you can't angle, you can't change the angle, you can't remove it very easily, and that's, you know, something that means it's going to take a little bit more wear. And the little rubber thing, you know, if it's in the sunlight or the rain, it seems pretty well sealed, but that's just kind of something to keep in mind. And so to hit the other menus in the display here, we've got our battery level, so it has a percentage there, 98%, odometer, 16 miles, trip distance, 0. Okay, that's kind of it when you arrow to the right. Up here at the top, you can see there's a lightning bolt, and that's because right now we're in turbo mode, and that's kind of like maximum output. If you actually hold it up for a couple seconds, it flashes, and then if you hold it up again, it turns into a little throttle, but you'll notice it's not working right now, and that's because it knows that the bike isn't moving. So if you're trying to activate this like a little throttle, it does go about 12 miles per hour. The bike has to be moving for that to work. So I'm just going to tap down again, goes back into regular, you know, torque sensing turbo mode, which is pretty awesome, really, really smooth. And then there's kind of eco mode, and this is actually programmable. So it says eco 40. I can change this by sort of holding over to the right. So what I basically have to do is kind of switch back into, kind of go up to turbo, down to eco, where it still says eco, then I hold to the right, and then it sort of flashes, and I can change to eco 50, 60, 70, and that's kind of the highest. And then all the way down to eco 10, and eco 10 is kind of like, it turns this into feeling more like a regular bike, right? You're just, you know, you pedal and it feels light, and it just feels nimble like a bike. And one thing I've noticed, it's kind of deceptive, because, you know, if you're on it and you're used to it feeling like light and easy, and then you lean, you're like, whoa, you know, it's a 50-pound bike. So, you know, like kind of leaning to the side, or I was track standing earlier, which is where you kind of like balance on the bike. And then I kind of tipped, and I was like, oh man, you know, it's deceptive. Like the technology is just so seamless and quiet that you at least I start to almost forget that there's a little bit more weight there with the motor and with the battery pack. And that battery pack does weigh about 8 pounds total. And, you know, so it's low, and it's relatively, you know, well distributed weight, but it's still some weight. So anyway, that's how you adjust eco. And then you can go down to no assist, and all the way down to regen. And regen is really cool. It just sort of slows you down. So if you're going down a long hill, or maybe you want a workout or something that you're actively sort of fighting the motor, it's turning this into a power generator, and it's sort of topping off the battery to the tune of maybe like 5 to 10%. And, you know, not a whole lot. There's not a lot of weight on this bike, as there would be like with an electric car. And but it's just kind of a neat feature. And in some ways, the regen helps to offset cogging, which is, you know, there's these, since it's a gearless motor, there's all these big magnets glued to the outside of this shell. Okay, and basically, even if the motor's off and there's not electricity running through there to power you, those magnets are still sort of repelling against a stator, these like piece of metal that electrifies. Okay, and you can kind of see that, like if I tip the bike forward a little bit on the kickstand, there we go, and then just kind of coast the wheel. See how it doesn't coast super freely, kind of slows down a little bit more quickly. And, you know, before we get out and ride it a little bit more, I did want to call out some of the accessories that it comes with. So we've got some reflectors, you know, it's got kind of the manuals and stuff talking about the components. Here's the owner's manual, and then this cool mirror that you can kind of mount on either side, either bar, and that's going to be a good safety feature. It's actually required in Europe, where this bike is also sold. In Europe, you do have to have a license and kind of put like a little license plate thing on the back. They also require the lights, which this has, and they also require this little nub thing. A lot of people ask, like, what is that? Well, it's a requirement in Europe, and I don't know if the idea is just to keep your fingers from sliding off of the brake levers, you know, more like a motorcycle or a moped, you know, they require it to be overbuilt, but those easily come off if you want. So if you're in America, I hear a lot of people say like, oh, those always, they just fall right off. You know, it's not something that people are kind of confused about actually. So wanted to point that out, and yeah, good stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna pop this back onto the bike. Whoa, there we go. Oh, and you know, you just basically click it in at the bottom. But what I've heard is that, you know, there's kind of like plastic in there, and it sort of keeps it from rattling. I haven't noticed any rattling. It really fits pretty well. But if you do notice, like if you had this bike and you noticed the battery was rattling, there's like a screw underneath kind of near the bottom bracket, and I think you might actually have to take it out, and then you can kind of, you know, adjust that plate upwards, and that'll squish the battery in a little bit better and reduce the rattling. So that was something I kind of learned recently. It was helpful. There we go. So it kind of clicked, and we're in. Kick the kickstand up. There it goes. Kind of scissors to the side. Stays pretty well out of the way. We're in turbo mode right now. I'm going to hold it up for a second with a little joystick. Now it's flashing. And now if I get a little bit of movement going, there we go. Throttle mode. It just takes you up to about 12 miles per hour, and then it kind of stutters, sort of start, stop. But really cool. You know, it's neat to have that. Like if you had to cross a body of water and you wanted to like pick your feet up and not get wet, that's what the throttle mode is for. And I might try that later, just for fun. And then you can just kind of tap it up a little bit, get a little bit more speed if you need to. So that's cool. It's kind of a secret thing, hidden in the menu there. And otherwise, you know, right now I'm in turbo mode. I'm just going to go ahead and pedal it a little bit and show you the motor, and you can try to hear it, but it's pretty quiet. Very nice. Yep. Up around 25 miles per hour right now. Really smooth acceleration. You know, it's much more like performance oriented than some of these bikes. They feel zippy and you hear the motor, but you know, it's just kind of like this premium fluid feeling. Okay, we're in turbo mode. The camera is mounted precariously close to the rear wheel, just looking at the motor. I'm not going to mute this. You're going to get the frame sound of the motor and everything. I just wanted to get a close-up of the motor because it is so quiet. Here we go. Once you're up to speed, if you want to, you can click down to regen. So I'll do that. Click, and now it's kind of a noticeable slowdown. We're actually bringing some battery power back into the pack. So we're at about 92% right now on the battery, and I've ridden about 3 miles, and I'm about 135 pounds. So, you know, again, it's decent range if you're pedaling along, especially if you're using that eco mode and if you kind of adjust that to feel good. You know, it's a very active, it's much more of a bicycle. You know, you ride this thing around, people don't really notice that it's electric, can't hear the motor. It's a different experience. It's very active. You know, your legs, you feel it, you're pedaling. pretty consistently at about 26 miles per hour. But I think the Turbo S, it hits that like 28 mark. One of the things that I wish the Turbo and the Turbo X had was a regenerative braking, because they do have a regen mode, but you have to click down to it. It'd be nice if, like on the Turbo S, they actually had it brake lever actuated right there, just to make it easier to use. You know, it'd be nice to use that as kind of a brake and save your disc brake pads and stuff. So it's a possible area of improvement there. There we go. For the full write-up on the Specialized Turbo X, including all the specs, the details, pictures, and stuff, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com.